Hey everyone, Scott here again, continuing with my top 50 board games of all time. This week I'm doing my numbers 20 through 11. I saw a trend when I was putting this presentation together, in that these seem to be a lot of the heavier games that don't hit the table as often, but I still really love. Not all of them, but this will be more of the. If you're into the heavier board games, that's what the majority of these are going to be. But yeah, let's get it started with my number 20, which is Ora et Labora by Uwe Rosenberg. Now, this is a resource collection, resource management game, and village building game. Uh, it is definitely on the heavy end. There are so many different strategies in this one, collecting resources, so many different resources to collect, so many different buildings you can build, and pretty much all the buildings in this are unique. So if you build it, no one else is building it. But the clever thing is, if you build it, somebody can pay you resources to be able to force you to use that building for their benefit. The nice part about that is you get your workers back faster, and you can use the same building more frequently that way. So there's a little bit of a fun trade-off there. The other really clever mechanic with this is the resource pool is shared using that little rondelle that's in the center of that image there. It's basically it's sort of like almost a clock where every time a turn happens, you move the hand of that clock further away from the resources. So whatever space the resources are on, that tells you how many of that resource you're going to get when you take that action. So if, say, nobody takes wood for a little while, wood starts to become better and better and better until somebody takes that resource and they're collecting 5 wood at a time instead of just 2. Um, so yeah, really clever mechanic there. And yeah, as soon as you take the wood, it just immediately catches up with the little clock hand and sort of resets. And so at that point, wood's not valuable to take for a little while until there's a few rounds have passed. But no, this was the first game that I ever played where at the end of the game I didn't care about the score. I was more excited about what I had built in front of me over the course of that 2 to 3 hours. It was a pretty long game, but yeah, really clever game, and usually a really close game too. I think the second and third time I played this was with the same duo of friends, and I lost that game to the same person by 1 point both those games, and it was scores in the ballpark of like 220. Um, so really good game, really tight, and a lot of fun to see what you're able to build over the course of the game. That is my number 20, Ora et Labora. And number 19 is, I would say, probably the heaviest game I've ever played and own, and that is StarCraft, the board game. Now, this game is out of print. It is really hard to find a copy. I had to go on eBay, and I hunted for a long time before I saw one that dropped under $200 even, although I got it quite a bit cheaper than that. Um, but it is based off of the video game StarCraft and feels a lot like playing that video game. There's a lot of that same resource management, managing your income with building new buildings and building units to be able to go do battle. Um, and it comes with a lot of plastic minis, which is one reason that before it was out of print, it was a little. This is one of the pricier games out there. Um, but yeah, an absolutely beautiful little game. Feels a lot like the video game. Uh, it is on the long end. There are 3 different ways you could win this game. One is by destroying all the other units of the other players. Not very likely to happen, but it's possible. Um, and second way to win is each clan. So there are 2 Terran clans, 2 Protoss clans, and 2 Zerg clans. Each clan has their own unique win condition, where if they meet it, the game is over and they win. Or it's the first person to get to 15 points, which you get by controlling different territories on the planets. Um, and yeah, so huge variety of strategy that you can go for this one. Just about as various as in the game itself, as far as what units you're going to build, what technologies you're going to research. Um, it is, I will say, it's a complex game. I think the rulebook's something like 68 pages long. Uh, Pretty complicated action selection mechanic with how you play your action tiles during each turn. And I'm freezing up again, so I'm going to stop the recording until. Sorry about that. Got some video choppiness, but we'll see if we can make it through this. I pretty much covered everything in this game, but the only other point to really make is a lot of plastic minis, which are absolutely gorgeous. And But they don't come pre-painted. But I recently got into mini painting, so I'm kind of starting to do a little bit of that now. So there's like a wraith, which you can see on the board there as well. They've got a wraith in one of those images. So I'm excited to get that going. So far I've only done the red army, the red Terran army, and about half of the blue Terran army. So I've still got the Zerg and Protoss to go, but I'm excited to get into that. Just one last note, I guess, is as this is a pretty heavy game, I can say I cannot recommend this game to most people. It's definitely not intro friendly. So if you love StarCraft but you're not much into board gaming, this is jumping in the deep end for sure. Still a good game, but it's jumping in the deep end. If you like space games, I think there are better ones out there, and I'll be talking about one in my top 10. As far as how it's designed, this one is a little convoluted, so if you're not sold on the StarCraft IP, there are others I'd probably go with first. But still, if you like StarCraft, if you like heavy board games, this is amazing. I absolutely love it. That's my number 19, StarCraft the board game. At 18 is Lords of Waterdeep. Now this is like my go-to game for teaching people worker placement games, which is probably my favorite game mechanic. In Lords of Waterdeep, you are sending out your workers to basically gather up adventurers in a D&D setting to go out on adventures for you and grant you renown victory points basically for doing so. So really simple game where it just goes around in a circle. Each person places out a worker, collects little cubes representing those heroes, or collects money, or there's a few other different mechanics of resources and cards you can collect. It plays over the course of 9 rounds, and highest score wins. Really straightforward, really intro friendly, great artwork. Do thoroughly enjoy this game. I started to get my parents into board gaming. I wasn't sure if I wanted to try teaching this one or not. But finally, I'm like, let's just give it a go. They should be able to pick it up. And yeah, they got sucked into it so fast. It is now probably the number one game they request to play whenever I visit. So yeah, that is my number 18, Lords of Waterdeep. At 17 is Dice Forge. Now, Dice Forge takes a different twist on sort of deck building. Instead of building a deck of cards, instead you are building your dice. So you start with dice that just have different sides that give you resources. On every time a player takes a turn, everybody rolls their own individual dice and collects those resources, be it gold, red crystals, victory points, purple crystals. But when it gets to their turn, they can spend all those resources they're collected to either buy cards for victory points and special abilities, or they can buy new sides to their dice. So they'll all start off with these little dice like this, but they can pop off one of the sides, and it's usually easier with one of these. Yeah, it's usually easier than that. But yeah, they can just pop the side off their die and take another one and stick it on. And now they've got a new resource that they have access to. And there's a whole bunch of just different strategies if you want to be going heavy after gold, so you can buy better cards early, or buy better sides to your dice early on. Go after the red or green crystal, so you can be buying those victory point cards. Whole variety of strategy, and all those cards that are out there that you can buy, they're interchangeable with other cards in the box. So you can just every game can be slightly different as far as what cards are available to. It adds a little bit more variety to the game. But really clever, simple mechanics. It goes for the course of like 7 or 8 rounds, depending on how many players you are playing with. And yeah, really fun. Dice Forge. That is number 17. At 16 is Viticulture by Stonemaier Games. Viticulture, I'll admit I've actually only played this game once, but I enjoyed it so much, and I'd love to play this game again at some point. I thoroughly enjoy it. In this game, it's another worker placement game where you are building up a vineyard, planting different types of grapes, harvesting them, making wine, aging the wine to get even more victory points. It's a lot of fun mechanics going on in this one. A little more advanced, but not awful. I'll admit that the one time I did play this game, I misconstrued one rule and played it wrong for the majority of the game. Still lost, despite the huge advantage that playing that one rule wrong gave me. Still lost, but I thoroughly enjoy this game. Would love to get back into it. Production quality on this game is amazing, as is all of Stonemeier's games. They're one of my favorite publishers, despite how few games they've put out so far. I think they've only maybe published 8 different games at this point. But they do an incredible job. So incredible that they actually made the next position on my list. I think we're at number 15, which is Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. So this is another worker placement game that takes place in a dystopian society. So your workers in this one are dice. And every time you collect your dice, you roll them. The higher the value is, the different effects they're going to have on the board. So a low value one might have one effect, where a high value would have a different effect depending on where you play it. But the fun thing is you've got to control the morale of your workers and the stupidity of your workers, basically. Because if your workers are too knowledgeable about the world around them, they'll start to realize they're in a dystopian society, and they could choose to abandon you. This is one of the few games where your workers kind of have a mind of their own. And it probably happens maybe 2 or 3 games where, based on how the roll of the dice when you pull a bunch of your workers back at once, if all of a sudden all of them are very knowledgeable about the world around them, one of them is like, nope, I'm in a dystopia. I'm out of here. See ya. And you've now got to brainwash a new worker to work for you. Really clever game. All the actions that take place in this game interact with each other in unique ways. You like every time you take an action, it evolves the board in a little bit. So it might give you access to new abilities over the course of the game, new places that you can go. And the huge value in replay on this one is at the start of the game, you start with 2 recruit cards that give you a special ability. One of them starts face down, and you don't get access to that ability until later in the game. But you start with one ability, and you can, depending on how you're taking your actions, you can take advantage of that ability to get huge bonuses in your actions to get a huge leg up on other players in a certain aspect of the game. And I think the deck probably has 50 odd workers or so, 50 odd different recruits that you can start with at the start of the game. So, huge amount of replay value in that. Every game's going to be a little bit different. But yeah, and absolutely, again, beautiful components. I got the Kickstarter version of this, so I've got my gold, instead of being little wooden pieces, are actually like metallic pieces. Beautiful quality, absolutely love it. And that is Euphoria, again by Stonemaier Games. At number, where am I at? 14? I'm losing track. Next up is Brewcrafters. Yeah, I think I'm on the right track here. Brewcrafters. No, this is 14. This is 14. Brewcrafters at 14. So Brewcrafters I own this one, which is probably the one reason I have not purchased Viticulture for myself. They kind of both scratch that same itch of a worker placement game, making an alcoholic beverage. They just go about it in slightly different ways. So at Brewcrafters, you have different market squares to allow you to buy malt and hops and yeast. And so you're taking those actions at in the first part of each round. After that, you're taking actions to actually brew your beer, or to do research, or to build up your brewery and add different rooms to your brewery. So you could build, say, an oak barrel house that allows you to score bonus points every time you brew stouts or porters. You could get hops infusers, which will give you bonus points every time you brew an IPA. So a whole lot of variety and strategy that you can go for this one. You can hire specialists that will give you bonus abilities over the course of the game. Every time you take an action, it's better than it normally is. But the problem is, you hire specialists, you have to pay them more. You add on to you're buying all these, like Oak Barrel House or whatever it may be. You're buying all these add-ons to your brewery. You have to be paying more at the end of each year. So you really got to manage your finances as well. Pretty heavy game. I'd say not intro-friendly, and on the longer side, which is why I don't get to play this one very often, but still a really clever worker placement resource management game on a theme that I love, being a home brewer myself. So that is number 14, Brewcrafters. In at 13 is The Voyages of Marco Polo. It's been a while since I played this one, but this one once peaked, I want to say, at number 4 on my list. And in this one, again, like Euphoria, your workers that you're using are dice. And depending on the value that you roll, you get better or worse values, or better or worse results. With what you can do with them. But yeah, no. In this game, one of the actions you can take is just move. So you're working your way across from Europe over to Beijing, planting little huts down at various locations that you visit on the path, which allow you to gain new bonus abilities, or bonus action spaces that you can have access to. You are fulfilling contracts to collect various resources such as spice and gold and so on and so forth. But yeah, really fun worker placement game. A little on the heavy side, but not awful. I'd still say it's more or less intro friendly, just not as intro friendly as, say, Lords of Waterdeep. But yeah, a lot of good variety of decisions in this game. Do you try to rush for Beijing because whoever gets there first is going to get the most victory points, or do you take another route and try to accomplish your little destination cards that you start off with at the start of the game, saying if you can connect these 2 cities, you'll get X number of victory points. So a lot of decisions to make here. You can't go for everything, but depending on what you do choose to go for, you got a lot of bonuses. And each player, that's the other awesome thing with this game, each player starts with a bonus ability based off of which famous explorer they're starting with. If you start with Marco Polo, you may get 1 bonus. I forget what as I said, it's been 3 or 4 years since I played this, but yeah, a whole bunch of variety in strategies you can go with just based off of which explorer you're playing as. But yeah, that is number 13, Voyages of Marco Polo. At 12 is Colorado, and this is my favorite filler game. And by a filler game, I mean like a 10-15 minute game that just you fill in between games when you're waiting to see how many people you have for the next game, or if it's at the end of the night and nobody wants to have to think about another heavy game. This is a good go-to game that just you can just play casually while you just shoot the bull. But in Colorado, this is a set collection game where you are collecting chameleons of different colors. Um, and at the end of the game, each set of colors that you collect is going to be worth points. But the kicker is the three sets that you do best in, those are going to count as positive points, while all the other sets are going to count as negative points. So you don't want to be taking too many of these chameleon cards because some of those that you don't get as many of are going to be hurting you in the long run. But on your turn, you have a choice of one of two things. You can either draw a chameleon card and place it in one of these 4 rows in the center of the table, or you can take one of those sets of chameleon cards that is out there, add them to your tableau, and be out of the round, and wait for the other players to collect theirs until the round ends. Um, and there's an incredible amount of strategy between, okay, do I just take this one now to make sure that I get these cards because I really want these 2 or 3 cards that have built up in this row? Um, do I want to grab those before somebody else, poisons up with a card that I really don't want? Or do I wait and see to try to get these rows to be better? But when I draw this card and place it somewhere, I don't get to select immediately. I'm just giving the next person a little bit more information. So it's this huge trade-off about trying to get as much value as possible without giving the next player too much information and too much opportunity ahead of you. A lot of thought processing for literally one of two decisions over the course of each turn. So yeah, I absolutely love this game. Plays quick, 10-15 minutes. This has kind of been a go-to end of the night game filler for us. So that is my number 12, Colorado. Number 11 is Antoine Bauza's probably most famous game, Seven Wonders. This is a go-to for learning card drafting games. Because in this game, you are going to have a deck of 7 cards, which could have warfare buildings or science buildings, cultural buildings, commerce buildings. And you pick one of those 7 cards and play it in front of you to get its special ability. Some of them require you to pay various resources as well. But yeah, after you draw that one card, place it down, you take the remaining 6 cards, pass them to the next player, and everybody will just pass these cards around, pick a card, play it, pass it. And this goes for, there are 3 phases where you do it with a phase 1 cards, phase 2 cards, and phase 3 cards, which get more and more valuable, but also more and more expensive over the course of the game. And over the course of it, you are representing one of the various wonders of the ancient world. So here, I think it's the Temple of Zeus, and at Olympia. And so you can be building that wonder, which will give you your own special ability, but you also start with one special resource, in this case, wood. But yeah, really clever game, really simple. There's a few people who will argue in the forums that there is only one, that as long as you play one specific strategy, you'll win this game every time. I don't think I entirely agree with that. I've seen it is a good strategy, but as long as other people see that somebody's going for that strategy and will do just even a little bit to try to get in their way, it's probably going to fall through. So it's yeah, I thoroughly enjoy it, and I think it's an easy way to block that particular strategy. But it is a good strategy to go for too, and it's fun to pursue if you're able to make it work. It's a good one. But yeah, that is my number 11, Seven Wonders. So I think that is it for this week. So I will be back next week to finally hit my top 10 board games of all time. I will see you then.